Hey everyone, welcome back. A question that I have to answer often for my students is, how do I get a job as a software developer? So what better way to answer that than to make a video and share it with all of you? To answer this question properly, we have to divide the problem into two parts: your actions before the job interview and your actions during the job interview. While we're going through this, I'll also be working on my new website, which I plan on using to share awesome resources with you guys. As a matter of fact, I've prepared a free guide as well as a checklist for you guys to go through if you want to land a job as a software developer. So by the time this video is out, you'll be able to download it completely for free using the link in the video description. Oh, and maybe you've noticed, but guess what arrived yesterday evening? That's right, a standing desk, so that I can finally call myself a real developer. Anyway, without further ado, let's get right into it. Now, a lot of people are really focused on preparing for a job interview by solving algorithm exercises, practicing their speech, getting a haircut, and so on. But what most don't anticipate is that getting the job interview in the first place is just as hard, if not even harder. The competition is very fierce, and if you're applying for a US-based position, you're probably going against 500 to 1,000 applicants for each position. So standing out amongst all of these people and getting a call with a recruiter is quite difficult. Luckily, there are a couple of things that we can do to optimize our online presence and stand out amongst the crowd. Number one is picking your company wisely. There's actually a large difference in the work style of, let's say, a startup and a large corporation. In a startup or a software development agency, a lot more is going to be expected of you and a lot more responsibility will be put onto you compared to a large corporation. Smaller companies like these rely solely on their developers and expect a lot more out of them, given their limited resources for each project. Now, the good news is that for a beginner, it's easier to land a position in one of these because they're usually not looking for perfection. They're looking for someone who can get the job done. So since you're watching this, I'm guessing your goal is to land a position as a software developer. So aiming for these companies will allow you to get your foot in the door much quicker. Large corporations, on the other hand, have a large pool of amazing developers to compare you against, and obviously it takes a whole lot more to land a position there. This is why FANG, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google are considered to be elite positions. They aim for the best of the best. But in larger teams, you're gonna have a dedicated project manager and you'll be working on your Jira ticket. And that's about it. A lot less responsibility, arguably less work, as long as you get your tickets out. Now, I think all of you watching probably have a different work ethic, so which type of company fits you best is up to you to decide. But picking the wrong company type for your work style will get you burnt out faster than I can publish a new video, which is about 2 weeks on average, so you should have just enough time to break production at least once. Okay, so you realize that your best bet is aiming for smaller companies at the start just to get your foot in the door. The next thing you're probably doing is going to Indeed, clicking on filter and selecting remote only. And now your chance of landing the position is about the same as Mark Zuckerberg sounding like a human. But jokes aside, if you're able to, aiming for local positions and in-person positions will increase your odds significantly. You're no longer competing against the entire world for that position, you're only competing locally. And even if the pay isn't as good as some remote positions, you can use that experience to transition to better paying remote jobs in the future. Number two is polishing your online presence. Since we're all applying for a job online these days, it is more important now than ever that all of your online profiles are polished and professional. But until you get a chance to go to an interview in person or via call, you're just a name and a picture to a recruiter, just like all of the other applicants. So it is incredibly important that you go to your LinkedIn, GitHub, and resume and ensure that each and every detail is perfect. So many people neglect this, but first impressions last. If you start behind the 8 ball, you'll never get in front. Each of these should be a strong representation of the value that you bring to the table and should give the recruiter a reason to want to speak to you. If you're a developer that has no experience, a LinkedIn profile with no profile picture, and the title of a senior software engineer, you better be packing some godly knowledge under your belt that you can showcase on your resume, or you're going to be having a difficult time getting on call with anybody. Alright, so number three is to showcase what you can do. The best way to get hired is to showcase the value that the employer would get from having you on board. And what better way than to have a portfolio they can visit, play around with, and view all of the projects that you've developed. So I highly recommend that you develop a portfolio for yourself and deploy it. And in that portfolio, include a list of the project that you've worked on with images, descriptions, a GitHub repository, and a live link. Basically, you would create a small case study for all the projects that you worked on. I know it seems like a lot of work, and in a sense it is, but you can't expect a recruiter to give you a chance if you can't show them what you can do. And once again, the portfolio should be polished to perfection, so pick your design carefully and ensure that all of the text on the page is professional and accurate. And of course, don't forget to link your portfolio, LinkedIn, and GitHub in your resume, otherwise, how are they supposed to find it? So if you've optimized your online presence to the point that it reflects your skills accurately and makes your value apparent, interviews should start coming your way, and for most, this is the scary part. So here's how to present yourself in an interview, how to answer questions, and how to avoid fear and stress during the actual meeting. The most important thing going into an interview is your mindset. I'm always very relaxed and easygoing during my interviews because I've adopted a mindset that there isn't any outcome of this call that is bad for me. Now obviously, if you're going into an interview and you need to land your first position, you probably don't have a software development position already. So if you go in there and you do horribly, you won't get the job. But you're in the exact same place as before, without a software development position. However, you just had a live preview of what is expected of you, and it was almost like a crash course of things that you don't know well enough and should know for that position. It's like you received a free lecture of, this is the stuff that you need to know to work for us. So for the next interview, you'll be prepared. Obviously, you could also end up getting the job, which is even better. But either way, this is a win-win situation for you. You either get the job or you get a blueprint of exactly what you're missing to get the job. Having this mindset makes these meetings so much less stressful, and I highly recommend that you try adopting it yourself. So tip number 2 is to admit when you're wrong. This is a mistake that cost me a job once, even though I aced the HR meeting, the live algorithm exercise, and the general tech knowledge meeting. The worst thing that can get in your way when aiming for a job is your ego. A good developer, a senior developer, is 100% aware that he knows nothing in the grand scheme of things, and that he will never in his lifetime know everything there is to know about his field. So if during the interview, a question comes along that you don't know the answer to, first try and understand what the question is about, and based on your own understanding, see if you can come up with an answer that you would think is correct. As I always say, everything in tech is closely related, so knowledge in other fields can come in handy here. But the key is to be completely honest with the employer, saying something along the lines of, to be honest, I'm not entirely sure what the correct answer is, but based on my understanding, I would think that so and so. This approach shows the employer that you're not blinded by your ego, you're not afraid to admit when you're wrong, and that you still took the initiative to try and understand the question and answer it based on your knowledge of other topics. Getting a job as a developer isn't just knowing everything, it's also possessing the proper qualities as a person that makes you a team player and someone worth having on board. As I said, this mistake once cost me a job because I wasn't humble and I tried to outsmart my way out of the question instead of admitting I was completely in the blind. So learn from my mistakes and adopt this mindset as well. And tip number 3 is to answer based on understanding, not memory. I cannot emphasize this one enough. If I had to pick the one thing that allowed me to get my first job so easily compared to most people, it would be this. If you've watched any of my previous videos, you know I'm a huge advocate of learning the fundamentals of your field. And the same thing applies here. No matter which question I am faced with, I always focus on understanding the question and answering it based on my understanding of the subject. Meaning that if you ask me the textbook definition of anything that I have ever worked on, I probably wouldn't know a single one. But I could talk to you about this specific subject for hours on end. And this is the key to acing absolutely any interview. If you understand the subject you're being interviewed about, you can come up with an answer on the fly, no matter how the question is phrased and what is being asked of you. Plus, you can always go in more detail if they ask you to do so. However, what I see a lot of people doing is going and learning about their tech stack like they're in school all over again. A textbook definition of what is React will not get you a job 99% of the time, but an accurate answer in your own words with subsequent questions and answers will. If you're not answering based on what you've memorized about a specific subject, you'll be able to handle any situation with arguably much less stress. Think of it like a PowerPoint presentation for school. If you know what you're talking about when you're holding the presentation, the only thing that you need on a PowerPoint slide is the title, and you can go on for hours. But if you only just scrapped up the presentation quickly, you will need to read off of a script or memorize it in order to get through the presentation. If someone skips a slide, it's over for you faster than Apple can release the same iPhone again. So once again, focus on understanding your tech stack and your interviews will be a walk in the park. Okay, so these are the most important tips that I can give you for now. There's a lot more that I want to share with you, and I'll do so in the upcoming videos as this one's already getting quite long. I'll be traveling home for Christmas, so the next video might take a little longer to get out. But my new MacBook's coming in this week, so you can expect a MacBook setup video for web development, as well as a guide on how to set up NeoVim, as I know a lot of you have been asking for that. I hope you all found this useful. Keep learning, happy holidays, and thank you all for watching. I'll see you all in 2024.